Hello and good fucking day. Welcome to Whatever the Bleep I Want, the show where I talk about whatever the bleep I want. Sit back, relax, grab your sweatpants, a shot of tequila, I don't care, and let's get on with the show. Enjoy. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the very first episode of Whatever the Bleep I Want, the show where I talk about whatever the bleep I want. I say whatever comes to mind, if it's been a past story, a current story, something going on in pop culture, maybe a little not safe for work stuff if you're nasty. And I share my experiences and my life advice and my opinion on these subjects. And I really get into it. We go uncensored and unfiltered. And before I continue, like I said in the trailer, this is a mature, content-centric podcast. I would highly recommend that if you're under the age of 16 that you do not listen in. This is a very adult podcast, and I swear like a motherfucker to give you an idea, and I talk about some things that aren't really appropriate for all audiences at times, so please be aware that this is what you're getting into when you're listening in. So I was thinking about what we talk about for the first episode. It was really hard to try to come up with a topic because I'm like, okay, how do I engage people? What's something for my life that I can share without getting into a huge amount of trouble? Also, I do apologize. I do stutter a little bit. But anyways, yeah. I wanted to talk about, something kind of embarrassing that happened in my life, but also something funny because I wanted to share some advice and share that side of how you cannot make the mistakes I did. And what better way to talk about mistakes than your 21st birthday or turning 21? When I was in college, I was pretty much an all-out, well, not an all-out party girl, I take that back. It was more so I would have fun, get into a little trouble here and there, nothing legal, and sometimes shit would hit the fan, and it really changed people's perception of me, and I will explain how that affected the story later on a little bit. So yes, I turned 21 and I was finally legal to drink alcohol in the United States. I was so excited because I was also a huge fan of mixology and making cocktails, and sometimes I would make cocktails for friends and family, and sometimes right now I still do that. And it's fun. I really love to be a party hostess. I love to entertain people. And that's one of the reasons why, I decided to start this podcast, because I like to host and I like to entertain. But during this situation, I wasn't in that momentum, and something pretty embarrassing happened. Now, before I go forward with this story that I'm going to share, please keep in mind that if you think you're being mentioned in this story, I grant full anonymity. And I was of legal drinking age when this story happened, so there you go on that. So a little background, I have my bachelor's degree in sound design from the Savannah College of Art and Design, and within my major I got to meet some really cool and very interesting people who are working on all types of things, one of which were two people. I might preface, there were these two guys that I met who were probably the most chill and laid back dudes, and if they're listening in, you know who you are, and you guys are amazing, and I wish we could have hung out more, but that's besides the point with what I'm saying. Back in high school, and middle school actually, I wasn't really the most popular person. I was always that weird kid that was into the emo and goth subculture, and all the spooky shit. And it caused people to really not take a warming up to me, or to warm up to me more so. Oops. But I was pretty much a black sheep, and I didn't get invited to a whole lot of parties. I wasn't, really in the popular kids social circle by any means, and a lot of people from my high school who are probably listening to this will agree with that, or who went to middle school or whatever. Basically, yeah. When I got to college, and again, I got to meet some of the people in my major, I finally felt like I had a home. I finally felt like I had this family that cared about me. Not that my current family doesn't care about me. I love the shit out of them, and they love the shit out of me. So, fast forward to me getting to know these people within my sound design department after being constantly ousted back in my hometown. I've got invited to a party. It was a surprise party for someone else within the major, and we were gonna all go out, we were all gonna drink, and, have some fun and responsibly, and just get into some fuckery, and just, be one big happy family. And I was so excited about this opportunity because I'm like, okay, I really have to show up here, and I really need to do something crazy for these people. Going back on the bartending I was talking about earlier, this is where that comes in. I offered to do some small bartending for the party. The drinks I made, because I had really horrible, cheap tequila that I needed to use up. I offered to make margaritas for people. Margarita making runs in my family. My dad makes margaritas. My grandmother, R.I.P., she used to make the best margaritas. So margarita making runs in the family. So I'm thinking, okay, maybe I can try my shot at this, what could go wrong? Going back to the cheap tequila I mentioned earlier, it tasted terrible, but I'm going to get on that later. So I offered to bartend for them, and they said yes, and they were very, very kind about it, the two guys who were hosting this party. And I immediately ran out, grabbed all the shit that I could, maybe a little bit of mixers here and there, and I grabbed my really god-awful tequila. Now, the day of the party comes, and I immediately march over. It was really embarrassing because, I don't like being the first person at parties, because you're kind of putting pressure on the host to kind of let you in early, and it was a little awkward, but the hosts were very, very nice about it. But yeah, anywho, just to let you guys know, by the way, I do have some background noise going on. We have our neighbors out and about, and we have people right now who are mowing around the neighborhood. So I do apologize, and we also have some air vents. I don't exactly have the best equipment when I'm recording right now. It's called being broke during the coronavirus. But to preface, these podcasts will get better later on in regards to that. But anyways, yes, the host, they let me in. I'm setting up my equipment, and people start piling into the party. We all managed to hide and surprise the gentleman who the party was for, and it was a really sweet thing. Everyone was smiling. The guy was pretty happy. The hosts were happy with how it was going. And all I could think of during this moment was, oh, nothing can go wrong. We're all happy. We're all going to have a good time. What fuckery could possibly happen at this point? That's when they brought out this pink drink. It was in one of those dispensable water containers, and it was pink. I already mentioned that. But yeah, it was a mixture of grapefruit, vodka, and Sprite, I believed. And the host made a very clear warning when he brought the thing out. One of them, he was like, okay, just be careful, it's really strong. But me wanting to show everyone up at the party and show them, to quote Amy Poehler, I'm a cool mom. I wanted to get completely wasted and show everybody that I could be fun and I could let loose. So what do I proceed to do in that moment of dumbassery? I took several cups of that drink and chugged it. I was pretty buzzed, but I was also having fun during the party, and I thought, oh, everything in the world is fine and all right. Nope. About a few minutes after I had this drink, maybe 10 or 15 minutes after, my head started feeling heavy, like a shit ton of bricks was dropped onto me. My chest was pounding, my stomach was just out of it, and I felt like I was floating on cloud 9. I was so drunk and out of it, I was going back and forth to their restroom at least 5 times thinking, I'm gonna puke, I'm gonna puke, I'm gonna vomit, I'm gonna vomit. I was really freaking out. I made a complete ass out of myself in that situation. And was no fun. When you're drinking and you want to party, you don't go too far where it goes to that, and I'm going to mention that later on in this episode. Basically, what ended up happening was I was so nauseous, I decided, fuck it, I'm calling an Uber back to my apartment. And you never ever want to do this because you could type in the wrong address, especially when you're drunk. But I did anyways. I was stumbling down the stairs, but I managed to get to the Uber and get back to my apartment safe. Now, here's where things really kick into gear. I left my key inside my apartment, and my roommate at the time had some company over, and I felt really bad for disturbing her. And I was pounding at the door like, yo, if you're there, can you please let me in? Please. Like, I am so out of it. And yeah. Needless to say, she wasn't really happy, but was kind enough for letting me in and dealing with that situation that night. And to that roommate who's probably listening in, again, I am so sorry for what you had to put up with that evening, and you're a real one. So I get there and I lie down in my apartment thinking, oh, everything is going to be fine. I'm going to sleep this off. I'm going to be fine the next morning, but nope. A few minutes after I laid down, that's when the nausea really hit peak level. And when I say I fucking vomited all over my room, I really fucking vomited. It was disgusting. It was not fun. I ended up having to throw away the outfit I had at the party, something that was really cute that I was saving for a special event such as that. I was so bummed, and I was just sick throughout the night. I didn't get any sleep. And then I woke up the next day, cleaned everything up by then. And then I realized I still had that fever and cold that I had for a few days, and mixed in with this now enormous hangover that I had. Oh my gosh, there was no way I was leaving my apartment that day. So I also remembered something in that moment. There was someone who I had to go help out that day. And as a friend, I do not like leaving other friends out in the dust, especially when they really need me. But I was too sick to leave my apartment. I just couldn't do it. So I had to call in and tell that friend I wasn't going to make it. I was also supposed to rent some equipment from another building a few blocks down for a project I was doing, and I couldn't do that either. I just could not leave my dorm, and I had to call the building manager very, out of it. And yeah, that really was not fun. So with all that said, have fun when you're going out partying and you're drinking when you're 21, but doing it to the extent where you have what had happened to me is no fun. And I'm going to right now lay down some advice for you if you're ever in a situation like this and you feel like you don't know what to do, and especially this is for you if you're about to turn 21 or if you just turned 21. First of all, I would say that before you go to a party, make sure you have everything with you. Your keys, your cell phone, charger, anything that will get you through the night. And definitely have some Advil or Tylenol on hand if you're starting to experience migraines or if you're starting to feel sick. And do not leave your apartment unless you are absolutely sure that you have these items on hand. Your safety and your essentials come first. My second words of wisdom, or piece of advice more so, would be get your shit together. Do not overdo it at a party. If you're feeling buzzed, that's fine, but I would stop right there and then. Getting sick, just to prove a point about how fun you can be or how loose you want to get, does not always do you good. you want to drink to the point where you're having fun, but you do not endanger your health or anybody else's health for that matter. My third token of advice would definitely be, if you need to leave and if you're too sick or if you're too out of it to go anywhere, make sure that you have a designated driver on hand or have someone who you trust, who knows where you live, call you an Uber. Someone who you know will punch in the address, right? Because you don't accidentally, in the midst of you being drunk, want to wind up at a Denny's or end up like somewhere that's unsafe and somewhere where you were not intending to be in the first place. And finally, make sure that you do not have anything going on the next day. You do not want to be out drinking before you have a very important event. Especially, even though I said earlier that you really shouldn't get wasted to prove a point. If you do plan on getting wasted for the sake of having fun and not proving a point, that's fine. But anyways, don't get drunk before a big event the next day. Because likely what will happen is depending on what your tolerance is, you might have a hangover and you might be so sick that you can barely move and get out of bed. And lastly, remember the impression you can last, or the impression that you can have on people more so, because people will judge you a lot when you're drunk and when you're making poor decisions in that moment. And I have had experiences in life where I haven't always made the smartest or the best decisions, and it really impacted people's view on me from a professional and social standpoint. And that's all I pretty much have to say on that. Just be safe and be responsible. So thank you for joining in on our first ever podcast today. We got through it. We did it. And not just the first podcast for today, the first podcast for the series more so. Next week, I'm going to talk about traveling with pets and the awkward and disgusting situations that come with that. Hey, thank you so much for tuning into this week's episode of Whatever the Bleep I Want. Please make sure to follow, subscribe, leave a review. I really don't fucking care on whichever platform you're using to listen to this podcast. Thank you for writing in on our bullshit, and we will see you next week.